So recently I discovered a development in the world of explicit content, cornication, pornography. Some people would say it's the biggest part of the internet. What was that theory that like 50, 60, 70% of the internet is corn? My philosophy as the addict in chief, somebody who has been addicted to everything but also quit, has always been the daisy chain method. We don't say yes to this addictive pastime or no. We understand that we adopt certain addictions or behaviors we wouldn't want to adopt as a way to cope with existence. And no one's perfect, right? We're all sinners. So what we try to do is maneuver ourselves in the right direction and understand each of these addictive preoccupations, what they accomplish, where they're headed, where they're leading us, so that we can slowly move to less destructive options, to a lifestyle that overall is more oriented towards the good that we acknowledge in our lives and that we strive for. So I made a video on quitting smoking, for instance. I didn't just say quit, it's bad. I said, hey, maybe go from smoking to vaping to nicotine lozenges and gum, and then you can chew on straws. There's like a daisy chain method. And also recognize that when you're taking something out of your life that's like a pull or a craving or a comfort blanket, you're going to need to replace it with something else, like exercise or God or friendship. Something else that's equally desirous, nurturing in some way, filling you. We often use the metaphor of the cup. My cup overfloweth. Anyone who has had a spiritual experience, encountered the Holy Spirit, for example, or had a Satori moment in the Eastern tradition, knows what it feels like to just be overflowing with a sense of equanimity and comfort and goodness and joy. It's something everyone should experience, because then oh wow, I don't constantly have it to be striving. I can be full and operate from a place of fullness, which is just a wonderful thing. But these drugs and addictions are attempts to feel that fullness, even if just for a moment. The fleeting euphoria and enlightenment of the cornasm, the corgasm, the climax. We're going to play the game a little bit here. I don't want to be flagged by a robot. When you climax, it's a 0.5 second long feeling of enlightenment. And it's understandable why we'd seek these things. Some people thought you need... Hey, choo-choo-choo. You need some kind of comforting ending to a day. It might be a glass of bourbon or scotch, or it might be making love to your wife, or it might be looking at pornography, which gets increasingly more novel. Okay? And that's the development I noticed. So, quick corn check in my life. I am a man who strives for some level of purity. That's what this ring represents. It's a purity ring. My God is pure in heart, spirit, and action. And that's what I strive for. How can I be loving someone if I'm lusting after them? If I'm lusting after them, I'm seeing them as an object of my own gratification. But if I'm loving them, part of that might be to form a union with them that results in life. It seems what science and philosophy and our experience is telling us is that the sex drive is related to our need to procreate in communal settings. So it both leads us to procreate, which makes us vulnerable, costs resources, all sorts of things. So it has to feel really good for us to do it, right? No one would make a vulnerable baby with a person they barely know if it didn't feel really good. So that's where the good feeling comes from. It's like, don't think about it. Make life, you worry about it later. The other part, of course, is the bonding, the oxytocin, the connective experience of lovemaking. And that's good because if you make people with somebody, you probably want to like them a little bit and want to be around them. You want to have some sort of bond with them. It's the same reason this dog is cute. This dog is cute so that I bond with it and I don't just leave it in an alleyway somewhere to get eaten by a mountain lion. And it touch, when I pet this dog, it feels good. It feels good to have him like laying on me when I sleep and so on. That reinforces the idea that I bond with this creature and take some level of responsibility for it. So it kind of makes sense that our drive for lust fits into a function. Most things do, right? Eating feels really good because you got to eat. But you can overeat, or a food company can make the things that you eat addictive and not really nutritious, and then you can get in trouble. So corn is an example of our lustful drive, maybe getting in trouble. Somebody is turning it into something that doesn't accomplish what it was designed for, the pleasure without any of the benefit. We all know this. So why, Devin, how are you still looking at it? Fool, why would you do such a thing if there's no benefit? Well, because in the daisy chain method, the first addiction I wanted to confront was casual relationships. I found that bonding with people through this act was leading to a lot of trouble. Because now I'm bonded to somebody who I can't carry throughout my life. Maybe they're an avoidant. Maybe I'm being avoidant. Maybe they don't want children. Maybe they're too old to have children. Maybe they live in a different place. And I'm bonding and doing this procreative act in a way that's causing a lot of trauma and damage. And I just looked around me and I said, every person who's gotten in trouble lately has done so because they used this, what some would call sacred covenant that you make with somebody by getting physically intimate. They use it too cavalierly, and somebody gets upset. They start spouting off. There's a scandal. Maybe they do it when they're married. It's just like it became clear to me that the lust in the form of casual dating or seeking sex partners was the most dangerous thing I could see in the modern world. We don't have a war going on. So the war is within. The war is don't be so intimate with people that I have no intention of carrying throughout my life. When I look around, that impulse has gotten people into the most trouble, both men and women. So the deal I made with myself is like, okay, I'm going to look at this imagery because I do have this drive. I'm not at a place where I can lead a family yet or find somebody who's adequate for that role and myself be adequate for that role, get to the point where I'm adequate. I'm not there yet. And dating is really easy. And so I'll use this imagery as a way to sort of convince my body that I am doing that. And then I don't want to date as much. Corn became a tool for that. So I don't like it though. I don't like it as a tool. Maybe at a later stage of this daisy chain away from this addictive impulse, I'll allow myself to just use my imagination or have wet dreams or something. There's another stage I need to get to. But right now I'm so focused on just don't get romantically intertwined with somebody that doesn't have a future, you don't have a future with. So I'm willing to use a tool that's a little unsavory as a step to get there. And, that's my own journey with prayer and with discipline. And you got to take things one at a time. I found social media addiction was more pertinent than corn addiction right now. So I'm working on that first. So if you're somebody who's like at some stage of this, probably you are, even most Christians are looking at corn. So understand that you're at a level of development, like you're being dusted off morally. You're being purified or sanctified, and you can't really rush that process. What I noticed is that the landscape of sexual imagery has changed a little bit. I'll go on the front page and I'm like, well, what would I want? Probably somebody beautiful, with a great body, doing something intimate. Maybe they're even enjoying it. I'm sort of one of these like vanilla types. Like, I've actually, if you look at comment sections or listen to people who are like really into corn, they say like the chief piece of content is one where both parties look like they're really into it. They're in love. Isn't that interesting? So it all links back to like, what is this actually for? To some experience of connection and beauty. So even with these heathens, their conscience or their body is signaling to them like there's a higher beauty available from this. What you're attracted to is pointing to something better. But there's also this side of it that's not so savory. That's novelty. That's, wow, I've looked at this stuff every day for years, and just like any drug addict, I want to up the ante a little bit. And so I started noticing on like these front pages, randomly, they would throw in a transformer. Like, oh, she's pretty. Whoa, there's a dong. Oh, nice blonde hair. Whoa, balls. What? And I remember the first time this happened to me, I was like scrolling through something and I clicked on it. I'm like, oh, okay. Wait a minute. You have to look twice. You're like, huh? Am I seeing what I'm seeing? That's a dong on both of them. And then you quickly go away. But it's like, I got tricked. I got tricked into looking at a dong. And then you think, wait, I'm always looking at a dong when I'm looking at this stuff. I'm looking at some guy's dong, and just because it's going into a woman, there's still a dong there. So then you start thinking, how many dongs have I looked at thinking I'm, a straight red-blooded male? Probably thousands of dongs. But that was like the entryway. And now they're going to throw in a beautiful apparent woman with a dong. And I remember even before the days of internet pornography, you would go to these shops with the beads. They have a beaded door. You go into the back, and there was the VHSs, the devil's VHSs. And what they would say, I haven't verified this, but some people who worked in that industry would say one of the most popular forms was what at the time we called tranny corn. I'm more comfortable saying tranny than corn. I'm just going to ban this. It's porn. If you're this far in the video, the robot has given up. So tranny porn was really popular. They'd mail it to people, this and that. And the theory went, this was sort of an off-ramp from straight, vanilla, missionary-style imagery into more gay, LGBT, trans imagery, opening up your mind. And what people don't understand, every gay man I get into a discussion with this, and I am like the straight expert on the gay experience because I've had so many discussions. I have very close people in my life who are gay, and we talk very openly. I'm not just like, oh, you were born this way. I'm like, when did it start? Who happened? Who was the first person? Why was he so much older than you? How did that make you feel? But wait, you were married and had kids. So were you gay the whole time? What's going on? You really break it down with a gay person or a trans person. I talk to trans people like, okay, you're gay, but why are you dressing like a woman now? Do you feel like a woman? Oh, wait. It's because you were with a man who is attracted to women and you wanted to be attractive to him. Me, essentially. Like, I talked to a trans guy and he basically like wanted me. And he was basically saying like, how would I have to look for you to be attracted to me? So that's a little different than the normal, I was born this way debate. That's more like, I've become attracted to something and I want to be attractive to it. And he was saying the more feminine I can look, the more guys like you might go my way. Maybe they're not there yet, but I might be able to lure them into going my way. So yeah, you get in these discussions, you realize it's much more in depth and complex than people would have you believe. You know, and some gay people I talked to, one client just yesterday said, you know, I don't like to share this, but I don't want to be this way. You know, he had children and grandchildren. He's like, I want to go that way. I think I was led this way probably because of trauma, probably because I was, you know, diddled at an early age by a much older man. In the gay community, they sometimes call that initiation. They call that a mentor. If you never have these conversations, you don't know these things, okay? The media lies to you. You got to talk to the gays. And they'll tell you, like, oh, yeah, it's a thing. You get a mentor, like an older gay, and he tells you, here's where the bars are, here's what we do, and you feel like it's the dad you could never connect with, but he's like 30, and you're like 15 or 14. What? That's just normal? Yeah, initiations, on-ramps. And it happens with the visual imagery, too. There's this on-ramp of tranny stuff that leads you to going, okay, I've looked at a lot of chicks with dicks. Maybe I'll just go with like a buzz cut dick. A femboy. Maybe that'll be an on-ramp into more gay stuff. Just as this trans person I'm talking about was trying to look feminine to be an on-ramp into just having a more masculine guy like me be into them. Because that's what their attraction was. And, you know, we could go... There's many people covering the psychology of what leads somebody to become attracted to masculinity when they're a man. You know, a lot of times it's just like your dad was remote. You didn't fit in with the jocks. So you had no way to get close to masculinity. And then all of a sudden some 30-year-old who's kind of masculine is like, dude, I want to lay in bed with you all day and play with you. And you're like, wow, a safe way to get close to this without changing who I am. I don't have to be like a football player or figure out cars or sports or speak the normative masculine language. I can get in bed with this guy who's kind of like, you know, a bear. He's got a big hairy chest and a chain on. And I can get close to this masculinity, this thing I was lacking growing up. This is a veering conversation. Stay with me. This is like a cloud-like topic. We got to get in the cloud and look around together. What I'm trying to say is I've noticed that the porn sites are putting more of this transgender stuff in there. And there's like other things. There's like a guy will be, you know, gangbangs, right? That's like an old genre. But now it'll be like, okay, it's two couples, and normally the girls would hook up a little bit, but now the guys are making out. That's new. What? Right? And it was new when the girls made out, like 40 years ago. Remember Katy Perry? I kissed a girl and I liked it. That was an on-ramp. Now, women are more fluid in this way. Women can get like mad at their boyfriend and be a lesbian for 6 months. And they usually go back. Statistically, they end up getting married. You meet a bi chick, check in with her in 10 years. She might have a boyfriend. It's very common. You know, you're frustrated. I mean, one of the first girls I had a little crush on, I checked back in with her, and we had made out at a county fair. How classic American straight. Made out at a county fair. I checked back in with her because I'm having some nostalgia, and I'm like, what are you doing? You remember that moment? And she's like hyper feminist now. And so she's really like, she's posting about how just men are trash. And I'm like, oh, I told her, I was like, that makes me feel not great. She was like, well, why should I care about how you feel? Of course you don't feel good unless you're being like blah, blah. I'm like, all right, chill, girl. But then I talked to her a little bit, and I found out she was becoming a lesbian. She was like trying it out. You know, I'm tired of men. I don't like men. I resent them. But my best friend and I cuddle, and now she's my girlfriend. It was just like a very like not typical you were born this way experience. She's pissed off at guys like me who kissed her and didn't reach out until 10 years later. And but her friend was always there, so let's just scissor her or whatever. It's always very on-rampy and complex like this. But women, they follow that on-ramp more quickly and they get off it. They get on the highway, they get off the highway. It's a little more fluid. With guys, and this is what I've tried to tell my gay interlocutors when we're discussing these things, they want to think that everybody's on a spectrum. It's the Kinsey model. Kinsey put out this propaganda that like everybody's like 10% gay. And, his sample size was like prisoners and sexual offenders and people who were attracted to weird sex experiments in the 60s. It wasn't a very controlled group. So he came up with a whole lot of ideas that have been perpetuated that, a huge percentage of the population is gay, LGBT. When in reality, when you look at the numbers, it's like 2 to 4% actually act that out, throughout their lives. So it's not that big. It's even smaller with trans. But what they'd have you believe is like, we're all kind of this way. We're all in this spectrum. What I try to tell them is like, listen, just like I'm an expert on gays because I have these discussions, I'm also an expert on straights. I've watched them. Okay. I've watched them with 10 drinks. I've watched them Eiffel Tower. I've watched like, how far will the straight go before it's gay? And the truth is, most straight men have huge walls. Like they find it disgusting. Like maybe nothing is more disgusting than the idea of making out with their best friend or going further than that. It's like a disgust impulse. It's different than women. I think we have much stronger boundaries against it. You could say that's cultural, but it's like, dude, I've lived in like the most gay affirming culture ever. And most straights just, no, not for me. But when the porn site knows that 98, 96% of people are straight and like probably 80 to 85% of them are like disgusted by the idea of LGBT stuff, and they start throwing in a feminine looking man with, his dick out, you got to wonder like, what is that for? What is that leading us towards? And so I just noticed that, and I noticed these guys making out with each other. I just thought, okay, it's trying to take a step forward. This material, pop culture, there's a lot of gayness in pop culture, and you're seeing a reaction against that. People like me stepped into a church when we've been hyper liberal, sex positive atheists our whole lives, but we're like, whoa, you guys are like pushing us too much in this direction. Somebody's got to push us back to like, hey, let's get back to the root of why we're horny. Let's have some kids. Grandma had 13 siblings. I'm failing as a man. At some point you just go, I'm failing. Can somebody push me in the direction away from, let's try a polycule, towards like, hey, figure out how to build a deck and have 6 kids. Like, can we just get a little push back that way? So you're seeing people push back that way, but there is this massive push towards, no, forget all that. There is no God. Family is a jail. You're in a jail. Be in the polycule. Look at the tranny porn. Be on the spectrum. And so I found that was something that was making me second guess, like this utilitarian idea of sexual imagery. Okay, I don't want to date now. I don't want to get intertwined. I'll just go home and jay off. This is like a big thing with guys. It's like, guys, if she's driving you nuts and you're in a toxic relationship, just go ahead and rub one out and go to sleep. It's kind of our like escape lever, right? And I want to acknowledge that like, the Christian's not going to tell you. They're going to just tell you it's all bad. There's no degrees of bad. When in reality, sin, as is expressed in the Bible, there are degrees. The sins that are based on like biological things we can't really have full control over, eating too much, being a little too horny, those are not as bad as the sins of like, blaspheming against God or murdering your neighbor. Okay, so there's levels to this. And I don't think a lot of people who are seeking a higher path are going to tell you that. They're just going to say, I've been on retention for 400 days and all of a sudden energy beams started to appear out of my fingers. It's like, okay, what about the people who like have to work and are just trying to get by and trying to do a little better this year than last year? This is what this message is for. I understand why you're looking at the images. I just want you to be aware, as I'm becoming aware, that there is an effort there to make you gay and to make you trans and to make you open to that stuff. Not just as like, hey, to each their own, but I might want to try. And I learned this a long time ago. There was like a gay man on my street. He was about 300 pounds, worked at the World Bank, and he would stay up at 3 a.m. and try to bang me every night when I came home from the bars. And I looked at him, I go, dude, I'm straight. I'm never going to, like, I'll have a laugh with you, but it's not going to work. Does this ever work? I'm like, you can't just like talk a drunk straight guy into bed. He goes, I do it all the time. And then I came back and there was a straight guy sitting on his stoop with him. And I went up to him. I said, dude, are you gay or straight? And he goes, I'm straight. And I go, you know what, this is my brother, but like, he's not just going to give you a drink in there. He's trying to give you a real drink. If you know what I'm saying. He goes, oh, okay. And I was like, would you? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I don't, he said, I'm lonely out here. I don't know a lot of people. So that made me realize that like a lot of these straight men are seeking connection and they might be vulnerable to being led into a path, that they might not want to go down. Just like the gay client I told you is like, I wish I didn't go down this path. I wish I was able to focus more on family. I wish this wasn't my comfort blanket or my coping mechanism. I wish this wasn't my coping mechanism. I wish I had a better coping mechanism. And so you got to be aware of that when you're using this imagery, as I do, as a coping mechanism away from maybe getting in a codependent, toxic relationship with no future. I understand why you do it, but there's dangers. The point of the daisy chain is to get to a level where your coping mechanism doesn't carry a lot of dangers. I do nicotine lozenges. There's really no danger, okay? I drink coffee. Very little danger. I exercise. Very little danger. And where we're trying to get with our lust is where the Christians are. Christians have the highest satisfaction in the bedroom. They're in the longest marriages. And the way I would, express it is like, you remember the first time you held a girl's hand? How the electricity just traveled down your whole hand? That was holding hands, bro. Now people are sleeping with 1,000 people a day, men, women, everything. And worse, off of the websites. They're doing horrifying things. So the path of novelty and more, and let me just on-ramp you into something a little more societally taboo. 1 year at a time. That's going to lead you to addiction, and it's going to lead you away from why these drives and addictions exist in the first place. You want to get on the path towards more vanilla. So what I would advise, if people are looking at the imagery, which most of you are, and now a lot of women are, which is crazy, try to get to the point where your parents were, where they had like the centerfold. Look at a image, look at an image in your mind. And what's so funny is that like when you take this cornucopia, nice. When you take this cornucopia off the table and you just say, okay, I can't look at that, but I can look at images. I can't look at images, but I can use my imagination. You'll just do it less. Because like when we think about, a villager before any of this existed, they're not, fapping all the time. First of all, there's always somebody around. It's like when you're visiting your mom's house, you're probably not looking at the videos as much because somebody's in the other room. It's awkward. But also, if you just have to use your imagination, like It's not firing up that desire and leading it into more and more novelty. So I would encourage you to continue the daisy chain, just as I'm encouraging myself in this video. Continue the daisy chain away from the imagery, which is now getting more LGBT, more, polyamorous, anti-traditional, and is going to lead you on a path which is going to require so much novelty, so much stimulation until you're numb, and towards the path where you're back to like, dude, you've been married for 50 years and you look at your wife in a dress with a little rouge on her cheeks and you're like, she's the most beautiful thing in the world. That exists, but it's a choice of what path to go down. And I would say casual dating is the worst. So use the corn if you got to get off the casual dating. Corn is the second worst, because I think there's something behind the scenes, or just the algorithm which craves novelty and people trying crazier and crazier things. I mean, look at these women who are sleeping with 1,000 people in one day. It's got to be crazier and crazier. Off of the OnlyFans, which is like this parasocial relationship that you're having with an Indian guy at a keyboard, and away, back to, discovering your dad's Playboy in a dumpster and using that, and then imagination, and then, okay, now my wife holding her hand or dancing with her is the most satisfying, stimulating, amazing thing, and it's actually more stimulating than the anything goes camp. So you get the best of both worlds. It's linked to its original purpose. It's more stimulating. It's more consistent. It's something you can carry through life. And it's not going to be addictive and lead you to new identities, which might not make sense, might not be making it easier for you to live out your potential as a human being. Getting banged in a bathroom stall somewhere with a glory hole ain't going to lead you to, writing memoirs. Well, the glory hole was so great. No, it's like you want to have like 3-4 generations of people. You want to find a way to impact the world towards love and goodness and neighborly sacrifice. The classics. The classics. So that's my first attempt to tackle the corn question. I would encourage you to recognize, where am I in that daisy chain? Where is it going? Why am I doing this? And recognize that there's something behind the scenes, like a siren on a rock wants to lure you in. Do more gay stuff. Become more feminine so Devin will sleep with you. It's all a lie. It's not gonna help fill the cup. As we said, the cup ain't gonna overfloweth because you added 10 more people into the room. It's not. The cup overfloweth when riding a bike is as exciting to you as jumping out of a plane. And they've done studies on this. The same dopamine can go off in me from riding a bike because I've returned to the mundane. I've returned to the divine in the mundane. So I can feel the same thing somebody feels from jumping out of a plane by riding a bike and seeing a sunset. And I can feel the same thing somebody feels by having like a Freddie Mercury style orgy, like in the movie, where you're just walking through the room of sex. I can feel the same thing from holding that woman's hand that I think in the back of my mind, this might be the one I make 6 little devos with. Is this the one, God? Show me the one. And I hope you all experience that. It's much better. So anyway, try to take a step on that journey today. Maybe go one day less this week. Maybe go image instead of video this week. Maybe get off the dating apps and accept that you're going to look at some images in the short term while your body gets used to it. But you're learning how to have a relationship with the very purpose for why all these drives exist. You're learning to have that relationship so that in the future you can have a truly communal, wonderful, connective relationship that unlocks the fullest expressions of these feelings, which, metaphorically, is like a cup overflowing. There's no more emptiness. Anyway, hope that helps. Have a good one. Right, buddy? Buddy. Not in front of the people. Have some decency.